Today I'd like to show you how to set up an ozone iron filtration system. What we've got here are a couple of different, two different components to this. This tank over here is actually going to be the filter that filters the iron out, but in order to get the iron filtered out, that iron needs to be oxidized. And there's a couple different ways to do that. This particular system has what we call a WT4. It's a small water treatment system that takes well water. When the well pump turns on, it forces the water through a venturi, and this venturi then pulls ozone into the water where it can make contact. It also does a good job of disinfecting the water and oxidizing the iron so that the iron that's in solution in the water collects together in little clumps that can be filtered out. And once we've got that iron oxidized, then it goes through this filter and filters the iron out. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail. When you get a system like this, all the components are separate. This here is actually the Ozone Generator. It has a feed gas inlet and the ozone outlet. Now this unit doesn't have an air pump or any way to move the air through there, but it relies on this injector over here. When the water is forced through there, it creates suction, and that suction pulls air through this tubing, so it actually pulls the ozone out into the injector. As it's doing that, this is the feed gas, so it pulls the ozone out here. It pulls air into this opening. Now with any ozone generator, it's really important that only dry feed gas be used. Sometimes they use oxygen. This one's going to be using dry air. So this component here is the VMD8 air dryer. It's got two different tubes of desiccant, and as air is pulled through it, it absorbs the moisture in the air. And when it gets collected, it automatically heats that tube up and forces the moisture out. So this is a completely automated unit. And when you get these packages, they come with 4 different clips, a couple different configurations. Those get mounted on the 4 corners, and you can mount this unit on a wall. There's also a fitting in here that threads into your feed gas. So this, you thread the fitting in there, it's pulling dry air out of this feed gas port. The ambient air around it is just getting pulled into the top of these desiccant dryers inside, and the dry air is coming out. So that's going to plug into here, and this dry feed gas, then we've got fittings here as well. It's the same thing with the ozone generator. You put the 1/4-inch barb on here, and this connects together. Now what this does, it also has a little bit of desiccant in here that changes color. And normal color, I think it's supposed to be blue, and then it turns pink when it gets damp. And that would be an indication that something's wrong with your dryer. Normally this is always going to stay the same, but if it changes color, you need to check out your air dryer. It's really important that these get fed with dry air. If they don't, they start to form nitric acid, and that can ruin the internal components of your ozone generator. So when that's hooked up, it's drawing dry air into your feed gas port, and the ozone is coming out. And we'll have a couple different pieces of tubing. This tubing is ozone resistant tubing. It's rather stiff, not the nicest to work with, but it's really the only thing that's going to work long term with ozone. There's Kynar fittings, and this is FEP tubing that's designed specifically for ozone. So your ozone gets pulled out, and we want to get that over into this injector here. But before it goes there, we want to put it through what's called a J tube, and this is really to help prevent water from ever coming back. This is a check valve here, so when your pump stops, There's no more suction on there, and you've got water pressure pushing back on this line. Without this check valve, water would come shooting out into your ozone generator. So this stops it, but it's never going to work perfectly, and at times it could start to leak a little bit, and slowly on water would seep out. As a secondary backup, there's another check valve. This one is ozone compatible, same with that one, but they do wear out over time, and if you're not paying careful attention to it, eventually you can get water that'll back up. What this does is prevent water from ever getting to your ozone generator. The water comes in and the water would drop down. Normally this would be filled about up to here with water, so that when this is operating it creates a suction on there, and you'll pull the water up slightly, but the ozone is able to go into the side here, out of the top, and to here. But if you get a leak, that water would flow back here and start to run into this tube here. Eventually it would overflow. So if you come into your space here and this is dripping water out, then you know it's time to change your check valves and check that out. But this is a very simple, effective way to ensure that ozone or water is not going to get back into your ozone generator. So just from your check valve here, this tube is going to hook into the side of your J2 from the top. This is going to connect to your ozone out. So your ozone is being pulled out of your ozone generator into this space here, down this tube into the injector. And these would typically be mounted up on a wall, and this J tube will be mounted someplace where it's convenient. If you need more tubing, we've got more tubing as well. All right, on this system here, there's a diagram in the operator's manual. We've got an operator's manual that'll go with it. But your well pump, straight from the pump, it's going to go into here first. Your pressure tank would come after your system. So when the well pump turns on, the water forces through here and enters this tank with ozone gas in that water. The water is getting pulled out of the bottom. So this would be treated water coming out, water that's been treated with the ozone. This is the off-gas vent. Usually we ship these so they're not attached. It's just too many problems with them getting banged up and cracking things. So this would likely be not attached. You'd want to put, these usually come with some putty on there. Just thread it in. The purpose of that, any leftover air that doesn't get dissolved in the water needs a place to get out. And it comes out of this vent without letting the water out. There's a float in there that when the water gets up to it, it closes it. When it fills up with gas, the float drops down, lets the gas out. Typically with a smaller machine like that, it's a pretty small amount of ozone that comes out of the top. But if it's in a really small area and you're getting ozone that you can smell quite a bit, you can vent that out to a safe location. So once we've got the ozone in the water, it'll treat for bacteria. It'll kill bacteria that are in the water. And it's also going to oxidize the iron. And by the time it comes out the bottom, there's really very little, if any, ozone left in here. From there, we want to go to our filter to filter the iron out. And this filter needs to be filled with 1.5 cubic feet of filter egg plus. It's filtration media for removing the iron. You'll have one bag plus a half of another bag. There's no real easy way of getting it in here. There's a dip tube right in the center, and we don't want to get any of that media in here. There's a 2.5-inch hole in the top. So somehow we need to plug that little hole and then get your filter media inside. And one option is to cut the corner so it's a little hole, lift it up and pour it in there. If you make some type of paper funnel, Might be easiest just to put this in an ice cream bucket so you've got smaller amounts to deal with, and slowly fill this up. And it'll fill a little over half full of this media. There's a space in the top. When this backwashes, the media fluffs up. You need some space up on the top. There's also, if you're not using an injection system like this, there's a smaller system that'll inject some air into the top of this. That's our FIOX filter. Injects air with a little bit of ozone into the headspace of this. I'm not going to discuss that in this particular setup. I just want to explain how to set this up. You'll have a valve head that screws into the top. The piece of tubing in here fits right into this the hole in the bottom there, and then it threads in. Turn it down until it seals up here with the O-ring, and you go ahead and plug it in. And basically what this valve does, most of the time the water is just flowing into the top of this unit, flowing through the filter material, up that white tube, and then out. And it'll do that for, I think this is default set for 3 days. After 3 days, the filter will, this valve will change so that the water is reversed, and water is forced into the bottom to fluff all the material up, and the dirty water with iron comes out of this port on the top there. And I believe that's a 3/4 inch pipe thread fitting. There is a little adapter here so that you can hook it up to a piece of, I believe it's 1/2 inch, is it 3/8 inside diameter tubing, and from there you go to a drain. So periodically it's going to backwash. That timing can be set. There's instructions in the manual for that as well. You can also do a manual regeneration. If you hold this button down for just a couple seconds. So it's telling me here that I've got an 8-minute backwash. A little motor that moves the valve, and it'll stop. So then the clock starts to count down. So for 8 minutes, it's going to be forcing water through the back, pushing your iron out. There's a 4-minute rinse cycle, and press it again, and we go back to the normal mode where it's filtering. Now to get that hooked up to your plumbing, a couple components in here. This is your bypass valve. With the valve orientated like this, the water is not going through the filter. It just comes in, bypasses, so the filter isn't being used. When you want to use the filter, you orientate it like that, so your water, let's see, I guess it's coming in this side. There's arrows, so your water in comes here. These hook up fairly easy. They just push it in a little bit and thread these down. Then there's going to be another fitting, depending if you have PEX tubing for your water, or if you've got normal pipe thread. This one's a PEX tubing, but there's an adapter for pipe thread as well. In order to get this on there, just set that. There's 2 different parts here. There's an O-ring, a rubber O-ring goes on the outside, and then there's a white piece of plastic. You be a little careful you don't break it, but you can stretch it over, and it pops into this next groove here. So there's 2 little grooves. This is on the first groove, and then the second one. There's that some of the threads on here. So then you can do your plumbing would hook right up to this. You do the same thing for the output. This one's for PEX, and they've also got them for pipe thread, and you'd want to indicate that when you'd order a system, which type you need. So once your water's hooked up, water's going to come in So from down here, your treated ozone water would come out and then go into your filter. From the filter, this is your filtered clean water going to your house. I think that pretty well covers everything for setting this up. We're always available on the phone. We'd be happy to answer your questions or send us an email, and we can help you get your system set up.